So the benefit of sports and highly identified fans is by far that sense of belonging, that sense of community.
The electricity, it's the electricity of the crowd. And that's a component that is very meaningful, and we won't have that, certainly in the short term.
What's interesting is that even if the team's doing poorly, when you're highly identified, you're still getting the actual benefits because we're going through it together. We're going through the injury together. We're going through that disappointing season together. And so that's what's really the most important aspect.
I think for sports, one of the big pieces is that there's this sense of connection. You're connected to other people in terms of fellow fans and your interests. For those who are participating in sports, it has that physical outlet. It has that sense of connection to team and teammates. So it has both a physical component and an emotional component in terms of giving us meaning and giving us connection.
At a time like this, we're missing something that we took for granted, something that we counted on. That also was a social connection that we had with other people. And even after watching a game, whether it was there or on television, I often took the opportunity to then contact some friends and talk about the latest Mets managerial mistake, or some other thing like that we could commiserate about. So all of that was a really very important part of social connecting through sports. During the pandemic, the absence of sports is experienced as a loss at a time when we all are yearning for heroes to guide us and to help us to feel safe. In some way, I'm kind of thinking of this absence, this period, which we've lost something that we always take for granted.
To get connected to maybe past games could be helpful. I think the other part is that there's tons of wonderful documentaries, and it can be a great way to dive into the sports world in different ways. So whether that's the ESPN 30 for 30 or other documentaries that are on Netflix or on streaming services, can be a great way to get that sport fix, and maybe at a level or a layer that you weren't familiar with before.
I have a number of sport fans and athletes kind of say, well, let me take it up and play more in my driveway, or let me teach my kid, or there's endless ways that you could do it. I think you will best benefit if you find what just speaks to your heart. Because the idea is that's the whole reason why we got into it to begin with, was because we enjoyed it. If you're worried and you're fearful of going back when they open up the gates, pay attention to it and ask yourself, well, based on the research that I have, based on my age, my health, my connections to more elderly people, is this a risk that I'm willing to take? Because it will be a risk. I'm not saying that there's a right thing to do or a wrong thing to do. Everybody's got to make their own decisions. But that's a healthy fear that we should have. I think that there needs to be a real healthy respect for what's going on out there. And I've actually been of the opinion that I think we're maybe a little bit too optimistic. Now, I don't mean to be all doom and gloom, but just because the government lifts the restrictions, we know that there's economic pressures to do so. We know that there's a lot of reasons. It doesn't mean that it's completely safe. So I think that rather than rushing to get over the fear of it, we should really respect and understand what fear is.